why trying harder isn't the answer. In today's video from Moonmind Temple, we're going to talk about why trying harder often leads to greater suffering and how Buddhist teachings offer a different path. Why is it that so many of us believe that pushing harder is the answer to life's challenges? We've been told that with enough effort, enough determination, enough grit, we can overcome any obstacle, achieve any goal, control any outcome, and yet somewhere along the way, that promise turns into pressure. That determination becomes desperation, and now many people find themselves exhausted, frustrated, and still not getting the results they want. They're working longer hours, creating more detailed plans, micromanaging every aspect of their lives, and yet the peace and fulfillment they seek remains elusive. They can't find contentment. They feel constantly anxious. They struggle to let go of outcomes or trust the process. And worst of all, they can't understand why. Because on the outside, they're doing everything right. They're still dedicated, still disciplined. But inside, there's this constant sense of struggle, like they're swimming against a powerful current, exhausting themselves while barely moving forward. And it turns out there's a reason for that. Many of us have built our entire approach to life around the idea of control. And when that happens, the very mindset that society praises becomes exactly what traps us in suffering. So let's talk about why this happens, and more importantly, how Zen Buddhism offers a way out. Because none of this is about failure or weakness. It's about a fundamental misunderstanding of how life works. And if you understand the root of your suffering, you can begin to find a genuine path to peace. When we're young, our understanding of life tends to be simple. Children are taught straightforward lessons about how the world works, and those lessons shape our fundamental beliefs. For example, a child might learn that if you work hard, you'll succeed, or if you're good, you'll be rewarded. It's all very one-dimensional, but that's normal. That's how our worldview begins to form. It's straightforward, and it's based on simple cause and effect relationships that seem to make sense. And one of the most powerful lessons many of us internalize is that control equals success. That message sticks. It gets reinforced by parents, teachers, media, and becomes a core part of how we approach life. And for a while, it seems to work. Having control as a central value gives you direction, achievements, and you basically navigate life through sheer force of will. You plan meticulously, you push through obstacles, and you stand out compared to those who seem to just drift through life. But here's the hidden cost. When you get praised for maintaining control, what people are usually praising is not wisdom, but dominance over circumstances. You were praised when you overcame all odds, when you never gave up, when you forced your way through resistance. And over time, you start to internalize a very dangerous idea. If I try hard enough, I should be able to control everything important in my life. And that belief will quietly create immense suffering once you truly engage with life's complexity, because the moment something isn't controllable, when relationships don't follow your script, when your body doesn't respond to your demands, when the future refuses to conform to your plans, it doesn't feel like a normal part of existence. It feels like a personal failure because you tell yourself, if I'm supposed to be in control, then why can't I manage this? So instead of accepting reality as it is, you double down. You don't rest unless everything is perfect. You don't enjoy moments unless they fit your expectations. You don't allow yourself peace unless all problems are solved, because they might expose you as someone who isn't really in control after all. And slowly, your experience of life starts to narrow. You only engage with what you can predict. You stick to rigid routines. You protect your illusion of mastery instead of embracing life's inherent uncertainty. And that's the trap, because while everyone else might be experiencing moments of wonder, spontaneity, and genuine connection, you're locked inside a self-created prison of constant vigilance and tension. And the longer that goes on, the harder it becomes to escape. And at some point, you realize you've built your entire approach to life on something fundamentally impossible. You can't afford to surrender. You can't afford to be vulnerable. You can't afford to admit that much of life is beyond your control. So you push harder, and that's when the exhaustion starts to set in. Because when you're constantly fighting reality, you also stop flowing with life. Think about it. Joy comes from immersion, being fully present, accepting things as they are, surrendering to the sunset, letting conversations unfold naturally, allowing emotions to arise without judgment. And if you start rejecting those things, if you remove yourself from the natural rhythm that everyone else experiences, you miss the moments that create real meaning and peace. You don't relax into uncertainty because it frightens you. You don't appreciate impermanence because it threatens you. You avoid vulnerability because it feels like weakness. And without realizing it, you start stepping out of the flow of life itself. But you still crave peace, right? So what do? You lean on what you know, your ability to exert effort. You try to force tranquility instead of allowing it. You analyze your emotions instead of feeling them. You create elaborate systems and strategies to solve what can only be resolved through acceptance. And this leads to something Zen Buddhists call trying to smooth water with an iron, where the very effort to create stillness creates more ripples. It works against itself because instead of just being with reality, you're calculating. You're constantly thinking about how to fix, improve, or control everything around you. So now even relaxation becomes something you have to be good at, and to avoid failing at it, you start avoiding it. This is where the suffering deepens, but you're determined, right? You should be able to solve this, so you start applying more effort to emotional and spiritual problems. You try to force your mind into calmness through sheer will. You write out detailed plans for happiness. You analyze your meditation practice to death, and none of it helps. Because willpower wasn't designed to bring inner peace. It's not a tool for enlightenment, it's a tool for specific actions in the external world. And when you try to use it to quiet your inner turmoil, it just keeps amplifying the noise, because there's no effort-based answer to the question of how to find peace. That question can only be answered through surrender. And for those trapped in the control paradigm, surrender is often the one skill that never developed. And when the strain becomes too sharp, when the exhaustion starts to feel unbearable, that's when the ego forms one final defense. You tell yourself, I just need to try harder than everyone else. I don't find peace because I'm not disciplined enough. I need more sophisticated techniques, more intense practice. And now, instead of admitting that your approach itself might be flawed, you convince yourself that you just haven't pushed hard enough. Not because you actually believe more effort will work, but because it hurts less than admitting your entire paradigm might be mistaken. This is what Zen calls spiritual materialism, and it's one of the most counterproductive patterns you can fall into. It creates a cycle of escalating effort and deepening disappointment. And even when you yearn for relief, the cycle doesn't let you step off, because true peace requires surrender. It requires acceptance. It requires letting go of the very control you've been cultivating. So how do we fix this? The first step, and this is non-negotiable, is that you have to stop identifying as the person who makes things happen through sheer force of will. You have to let that identity go, not because effort is bad, but because making it your primary response to everything is fundamentally misaligned with reality. When your approach to life is tied to controlling outcomes, you will do everything in your power to avoid surrender, avoid acceptance, and avoid situations that might require you to simply be with what is. You'll create more suffering just to protect the illusion of control, and eventually that illusion will collapse under its own weight. So the fix is to build a new relationship with reality, not around controlling it, but around harmonizing with it. You stop asking, how can I make this situation bend to my will? And start asking, how can I align myself with what's already happening? You stop protecting your need to dominate circumstances and start embracing the wisdom of yielding. You let yourself experience life without constantly trying to direct it. You start showing up, not to conquer, but to participate. And yes, it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, it feels like stepping into the void, but it's not, because it's the first real step toward genuine peace. The old paradigm told you that your value came from managing everything perfectly. The new one reminds you that your liberation comes from recognizing what's truly within your power and what isn't. And being wise means you're allowed to surrender. You're allowed to not know. You're allowed to trust. You're allowed to let life unfold in its own way half the time. But the only way to experience this is to genuinely let go. Not perfect letting go, not strategic letting go, just honest, immediate release of the need to control. So if you're someone who feels perpetually tense or drained or disconnected from joy, if you've spent your whole life trying to be the most disciplined, most productive, most in control person in the room, and now you don't know how to be anything else, this is where you begin. You let go of the story. You stop trying to force your way through life. You start allowing life to move through you, because you don't need to control everything to be at peace. In fact, it's precisely the opposite. You just need to be someone who's willing to accept reality as it is, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain, even when it doesn't match your expectations. And if you can do that, if you can stop clinging to the version of yourself that needs to manage it all, you'll start to feel something you haven't felt in a long time. True peace. Not because you earned it, not because you achieved it, but because you were finally willing to step out of the exhausting position of controller and into the natural flow where life itself carries you. And it turns out that flow isn't so threatening after all. In fact, it's the only place where you can truly rest. And more importantly, it's the only place where you can finally feel at home with the unpredictable, impermanent nature of existence. So if any part of this resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in these patterns or felt something shift inside that you've been trying to force into place for too long, leave a comment and let me know what stood out. Chances are you're not the only one who feels this way, and sometimes naming the pattern is the first real step to breaking it. Thanks for watching this Moon Mind Temple video. Take care of your heart, and I'll see you in the next video.